Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Reinard. I am a product specialist here at Intuit and your presenter for today's meeting, which is an overview of Lacerte professional tax software. Before I begin, first of all, I would just like to say thank you. I do appreciate so many of you joining me on the call today and taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. This meeting is going to last right about 60 minutes, and really the overarching goal of the meeting isn't so much to show you every feature and function of Lacerte. We have webinars that'll do that, but really to give you a good general overview of the end-to-end process of using Lacerte for your firm for tax prep, and then introducing some of the features and functions that we've attached to Lacerte to make our customers more productive. I know some of you on the call are probably already using Lacerte, and if you are, thank you very much. Some of you may be using other products and you're just here kicking the tires to see what Lacerte is all about. And frankly, some of you are just here for the credit for the course. I'm okay with that too, but regardless of why you're here, I guarantee you'll learn something today that maybe you didn't know. I break this into two pieces. The first 5 minutes or so, I'm going to show you a few slides to introduce Lacerte to you. At that point, I'm going to pull up the live program, the 2023 program, and I'm going to use that for the duration of the meeting. I get into pretty good amount of details in this. There's a lot to show, so hopefully you're able to follow along okay. If you would like to get a copy of the recording afterward, I will put my email shortly in the chat. You can write my email down, and please send me an email if you want to get a copy of the course. I'm happy to send it to you. If you have any questions for me as I'm presenting, there is a questions panel on your screen that you can open and send questions. I'll check them every 5 minutes or so. A couple of people are already in there letting me know where they're from. So I've got someone currently from Texas, another person from Chicago, and another person from Sacramento, California. So if you want to jump in there and let me know where you're all from, I would be happy to know that. I'm a home office person for Intuit. 25 years now, I've been working remotely, and I live in Long Beach, California, which if you're familiar with the Los Angeles area, is about 30 minutes south of LA. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start in on the information now. Again, thank you for being here. If you have questions, please don't hesitate. So the second slide is my bio slide. I've been with Intuit. I started my career actually back in 1982 with Lacerte, when I was a sophomore in college, and I've been with Lacerte, and then Lacerte was acquired by Intuit back in 1999. So my full duration is 42 years. I am an expert on Lacerte, as you can imagine, and our other tax programs. I do a lot of training of new customers. I train all the new staff that we bring on each quarter. I work a lot with our marketing and engineering teams. My background is more in product management, where I spent about 15 years actually overseeing the development of this product. And I do over 100 webinars. I travel and speak to different state societies and such. Now, to get credit for the course today, there are two things you need to make sure that you do. First, I'm going to ask you 4 polling questions. Make sure you answer at least 3 of those. And secondly, make sure you stay here for a minimum of 50 minutes. If you do both of those things, the certificates will be emailed to you, and it generally takes usually about 2 days, but just to be safe, I say 3 to 4 days for them all to be processed and emailed. All right, so what am I going to cover today in our meeting? So the first thing when I'm done with my slides is I'm going to pull up Lacerte, and I'm going to take you from one end of the program to the other. How do we manage our clients? How do we do data entry? What does the diagnostic process look like? Kind of the end-to-end workflow of tax prep. After that, I'm going to start to introduce some of the tools that we've developed that work with Lacerte, so you kind of know what those are. We're also going to talk about an exciting new application that we've developed that attaches to Lacerte called Tax Advisory. And I'll give you kind of a heads up. You have multiple different tax planning tools in Lacerte, but this is our latest one, and it's pretty exciting. We'll also talk about electronic signatures. And then at the tail end of the meeting, I'm going to discuss some of the options that you have for attached document management systems. We have our own, actually have 2 that we provide, or you can use a product called Smart Vault, which is a third-party vendor that we've worked with for years. as well as another company called SafeSend that we've just developed recently an integration with. Yes, this course is also eligible for CE credit, Michael. All right, so here is a list of all the main tax programs that are supported by Lacerte. So you've got your 1040s all the way through the benefit plan software. You can do any type of return in Lacerte. The other thing about Lacerte, it has very good diagnostics. And in our industry, depending on the product, some products do a really good job in finding critical issues because those are e-file related, but some don't give you a lot of what we call informational types of diagnostics. That's one thing I think Lacerte does exceedingly well. So I'll show you an example of that later on. And then, of course, this is considered, of all the tax programs in the industry, on the high end of things in terms of the computation power. Things like QBI, consolidated corporates, PTE, foreign reporting. So it does the most complex things. The other thing about the program is it is a very good e-file system in the background. Intuit as a company, you may not know this, we e-file nearly 4 in every 10 returns that get filed with the feds in the states. And so our rejection rate is something like less than 0.5%. Bottom line is if you can get a tax return out of Lacerte, it's almost 100% chance it's going to be accepted. Okay, and we also have lots of features in Lacerte. I'll show you a few of these today, but things like being able to import data from QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop or from spreadsheets. We have a K1 transfer feature. You can link to brokerage accounts and import data directly from your client's broker. You can scan documents and we can extract data from those. So we'll talk about some of this as we go through it today. The last thing too to mention is Lacerte is a desktop application. What that means is you install it from our website, and then we give you updates that you have to install during tax season. But we do have an option for many of our clients who have taken advantage of it. It's called hosting. Hosting is not cloud per se, but it's a third party that installs Lacerte for you on a private server, and you just log into it. So it really saves a lot of firms in the IT infrastructure hassles, worrying about security. There is a fee associated with it, but for a lot of people, this makes a lot of sense. All right, so that's a little bit of information about Lacerte. And then for those of you who just joined, I'll just say this once more. I'm going to ask you 4 polling questions. Make sure you answer at least 3 of them to get credit for today's course. I'm about to ask you polling question number 1. How satisfied are you with your current tax prep software and your firm's overall workflow? So we got a question here, which is a pretty common question. ProConnect Tax Online, which is, by the way, is our cloud program, has the Lacerte engine. Is it really duplicate software? What is the advantage of Lacerte over PTO? That's a very long answer to that question, but the bottom line is Lacerte, which has been around for 47 or so years, shares 2 things with our online platform called ProConnect. The screens, the data entry, are literally the same. Okay, so we basically borrowing the engine of Lacerte since it's very high end, and we use it for ProConnect. The other thing that's shared is the diagnostics. They are literally the same between the 2 products. Now, ProConnect gives us some advantages that we don't have with Lacerte. For example, I never have to install anything. I just go to my browser, I click it, and I'm right in the program. It's always up to date. The other thing that's helpful too, in Lacerte, you can open a current year tax return for someone and their prior year return simultaneously, but what you can't do is have multiple returns open in the same year. And in the cloud program, you could open 10 returns and they could all be 2023 returns. You could open prior years. Those are just a couple of little things, but certainly we can give you more information on that. So I'm going to go ahead and close out poll question 1, and let's get to the demonstration. Here's where I'm going to pull up Lacerte on my screen and give you kind of a lesson on how to use it, what the workflow looks like and such. So this is the opening screen of Lacerte Tax. We call it the client screen for good reason. It's a list of all your clients in the first column, full name, last name first, sorted alphabetically. The client screen in Lacerte has a lot of functionality. This is where you add new clients, if you wanted to maybe make a copy of a tax return, if you want to put a password on one, if you want to lock it once it's been e-filed so people can still open it, but they can't change data. A lot of those functions are handled on the main screen, and I'll explain a few in just a moment. However, if you look up in the upper left-hand side, when we developed Lacerte, what we wanted to do was show you the workflow so you understand it really quickly how to use it. So if you look in the upper left, you see these little buttons, we call them tabs. So there's a tab called Clients, and I'm currently on that tab, and that's why I'm sitting on the client list. But if I open a tax return, it'll shift and open into the Detail tab, and that's where I do my data entry. Once I'm done with data entry and I want to look at the tax return, that's the next tab, Forms. Just open that up, and that's where we show you the federal and state tax returns for review. After that, you flip to the Diagnostics. That's where you'll see the critical errors as well as anything that is informational. And then the last tab that we'll go into in detail, we call it Analysis. And we only do this on 1040 returns because that's where it's relevant. If you get a question from a client on how much can I contribute to my IRA? What's my max SEP contribution? And if I make that contribution, how much would I save by doing so? You don't actually have to do any data entry in the return. All you have to do is click that button and we'll tell you. Kevin could have contributed $12,500 to his self-employed retirement plan. And if he does that, he will save exactly, I don't know, $5,200 as an example. All right. So that's kind of the workflow of Lacerte. All you do is start with the Clients tab and work your way to the right. That's how you use it. It's not too difficult. All right, so I'm going to walk you through each one of these buttons in the workflow, and I'm going to begin with the Clients tab. It's going to take about 15 minutes to kind of walk through the whole process. So a couple of other things that our clients really, really like about the client screen. First of all, you notice how much information I have out here. I've got their name. I know who the preparer is that's been assigned to each return. I know the status of the tax return. Some of these are final. This client's on extension. Certain clients, I'm waiting for information. This isn't the e-file status. This is just a status or a kind of a label that you put on a return so you can track the progress. I've got, if I scroll to the right of the screen, it exceeds the width of my screen. I've got columns that show who's got alimony paid. I know everyone's first quarter federal estimate, their business income, capital gains. There are 500 different things that you can select from to build almost like a spreadsheet view of your data. Anything is fair game. As you do the tax returns, we fill the screen out when you return out to the back to the client screen. The other thing is the most widely used feature in Lacerte is the status feature. So let's say I've got a client, Samantha, who's currently marked on extension, but I just finalized the return. Select the client. At the top of the screen, there's a button that you click to open the status and you select final. Simple as that. And it just changes the label on the screen. Okay. So it's a really nice way to track the work. And then on the left-hand side, we have an area called a filter. So let's say you want to know all the clients with a current status of on extension. You can sort the column, or you can just go over here to the filter for client status and click on extension. Here they are. Easy. How many clients right now are marked as ready for review? How many are already final? How many are waiting for information? It's pretty great. And the nice thing about the statuses is we give you some, I think 5 to start with, but you can have up to 20, and you can even change the ones we give you. It's totally up to you what you call that tracking of the statuses. So that's kind of how that works. All right, so let's take a look at a tax return. So I have a client example that I'm going to start with a 1040, and the name of the client is John and Katie taxpayer. So let's double click to open the return, and it takes us to this screen. We call this the table of contents. This is your main data entry screen. You'll notice in the upper left that the tab is on detail, and I remember I said this is where we enter all the data. So this is our main data entry. It's not forms. You're never going to go directly to the form, click line 1 of the 1040 to link to a W-2. What we're doing is we're taking all the individual tax screens and we're putting them on a single page called the table of contents, and we're breaking the screens down by categories. The first category is general. Your client information, residency, name, address, assigning a preparer is on that screen. Number 2 is where all the dependents get entered. Number 3 is if you want to pay the tax, direct deposit, you want to pay estimates, you would use the screen number 3. Okay. Second section is called payments and penalties. This is where you would plug their 2023 estimated tax payments. You want to file an extension. The income screen lists all the income. Okay? Here's all the deductions in the deduction screen, which takes us to the top of column 2. All the credits, the taxes, state and local. And then on the far right, we have this thing called miscellaneous forms. So if you need to do a 1040 NR, you want to amend or do a superseded return, you want to do, fill out the paid preparer's due diligence checklist. As a matter of fact, we actually do that for you. Or if you want to do foreign reporting, the 114, you'll find those on the right-hand side. So it's really easy to know what's already going on in the return because all the highlighted screens are the ones that already have information on them. If you had done a couple hundred returns in Lacerte last year and you transfer all the client files from one year to the next, and you open this return for the first time, these screens will already be bolded telling you all the data that transferred from the prior year. So it makes it really easy to kind of as a starting point. Now, again, you're not looking at something that looks like a tax form. It's kind of considered a data sheet that you're filling out. So for example, if I open Schedule C, which is screen 16, business income, here's my first business, sample business, here's the address section. So it's got the same information in the same flow. Then the general information like accounting method, taxpayer spouse joint, and then down here we get right into the income section, cost of goods, expenses. Now what you will notice and really like about Lacerte is we do have prior year amount fields on all the screens so that when we transfer the return from the prior year, you can see what the client had coming from the prior year. I just created this return from scratch. That's why there's nothing in the prior year column, but there would be. Okay. Now, this client has 2 businesses. Where do I see the other businesses? On the left-hand side, there's a box that says business. I'm on sample business, but if I click Biz 2, it opens the second Schedule C. And if I want to add a third one, down at the bottom of the business box is a button to add or delete businesses. Okay. Now you see at the bottom of my screen, there's all these tabs down here. Those are exactly the same as all of your highlighted screens. Why do we do that? Well, if you're in a screen like Schedule C, we don't want you to have to always go back to the table of contents to access a screen that you know is already in the return. So if you want to go to the rental screen, there's a Schedule E tab down at the bottom because they already have rental properties. Click on Schedule E and it's the same layout. Residence at Oak Street on the left, 601 36th Street, add, delete, and prior year indirect and direct expenses. So that's kind of the flow of it. It doesn't really change even if you're entering something like a dependent. Different data, same workflow. Here's Mary dependent or Mary taxpayer. On the left, I've got Mary and I've got Kevin. If I want to add one, click and add another. And we have that nice field here that says I'm not claiming the dependent every year. So you don't have to remove the dependent if they're not taking the deduction. You just tell us even years, odd years, claim it this year, it's that sort of thing. So it kind of saves a little time with that. So that's kind of the layout of it. So that's a certain screens look like others. There are different ones than the ones I've shown you though, that you'll see on something like dividend income. It's what we call a grid. Grid screens are designed for rapid entry off of a 1099 or interest or stock sales or asset entry. These are the most common fields that we know our users enter off of that form, and that's why we put it in this quick entry mode. It's almost like Excel. But what happens though, if you've got something that isn't part of the grid, like federal tax withheld, which isn't so common, the bottom part of the screen is called the expanded screen, which has all the entries off of a 1099 DIV. So down here, you would simply go to federal income tax withheld and plug it there. Or if you were linking it to the 1116 from the dividend screen, this is where you would do that. But generally, most items that you enter are entered up here because these are the most common things. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So that's high level data entry, right? The only other thing I would show is what I get questions on a lot is how would I do a multi-state return? I've got a client that's filing in Kansas, Missouri, Mississippi. So all of that starts on screen number 1, client information. We ask you, where did they live at the end of last year? Since I'm a California resident, I put in CA and I marked full year resident, and then I clicked multi-state, which allowed me to add the state on the left-hand side, Arizona. If I want to add more states, just click add, and here's a list of all the states. So because I've got a resident California and non-resident Arizona, and let's say I go to the pass-through K1s button at the top, I've got a partnership K1. Okay, so it opens up the K1 screen, and here are all the line numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. If I'm sourcing ordinary business income or loss to more than one state, I open the box to the right of each field, and then I say this much is Arizona, this much is Kansas, this much is Missouri. That's how I do multi-state sourcing. It's the same on a W-2. Wages, salaries, tips box, click it, open it, source it to the states. Not difficult. All right, so again, I always tell people if you've never used Lacerte, it's pretty logical in where things go. It'll take you a couple of returns to play with to understand what the way our tax analysts think. But once you do, I think you'll find that it's very, very efficient. Now, before I go to the next screen, I'm going to ask you the second polling question. This is, in what type of an environment do you prefer to run your tax software? Do you like desktop software? Do you like desktop software, but do you like to have it hosted? Or would you prefer something that's more in the cloud? All right, so thank you for voting. Once we get to 90% of the vote, I'll let you know how everybody feels about how they like to run their software. So we are currently at 88%. So 42% of this group say we like desktop software. 13% say hosted, and 43% of you have answered in the cloud. For those of you who answered in the cloud, I'm giving a course tomorrow, if you have some time, 11 a.m. Pacific time, where I'm doing a course on our cloud program called ProConnect. It's very much like what I'm doing here, except I'm kind of showing you the newer technology and some of the benefits of ProConnect. But remember, it does share some common things with Lacerte. These screens are the same screens you're going to see tomorrow if you come to that course. Diagnostics are same, that sort of thing. All right, so I'm going to do a countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and close poll question 2. All right, so let's get back to it. So remember, if we follow the workflow in the upper left, we started on the client screen. We double clicked and opened the tax return, which took us to the details section where we use the table of contents to enter everything we've got. Now we want to go to the next button called forms. However, if some of you, which I know you do, have multiple monitors on your desk, we have a feature to take advantage of that. So in the button bar running across the top of the page, the final button on the right says pop out forms. If I click that button, it's going to take the forms tab, the contents of the federal and state forms, and it's going to put it on my second monitor automatically, which means I can literally do data entry on monitor A, pull up any form I want on the other screen, and it's changing instantaneously as I enter data into a return. So you can view the output at the same time you're viewing the input, just so you know that. But I'm just going to go ahead and do it this way. I'm going to click out and go to the form screen. So Jillian, good question. When you're filling out the information, does it give you prompts that there's missing information on the form like Pro Series, or is it just at the end? It's really up to you. I don't have the automatic diagnostics turned on, but there is, in our options, you can turn it on. So if there's a missing field that is required, we will tell you that at the point of data entry, or you can just slap everything in, and then we go to diags, we'll pick all that up. So you can do it either way. Good question though. All right, so this is our forms screen, and this is where we review the tax return, starting with the federal income tax summary, which is a 2-year comparison. Now, again, I didn't have anything in 2022. That's why there's no data there. But if I go down to the bottom, it's all the tax computations, what they owe, the refund, amount due, ordinary tax bracket, and effective tax rate. If I want to see the same thing for my states, because I've got a California and Arizona return, go to the left. And because I'm on the tax summary in the list, below that, I can click Arizona and see the 2-year comparison there, or California. Above is a list of all the forms. And these forms are exactly like it looks when it prints, and it's the entire tax return. So there are programs out there that make you do a print preview to see all the documents. We don't really require that, because here are all the forms. I've got an invoice, I've got a tax summary, I've got my married filing joint and separate comparison. And by the way, if it's better for the client to file separately, we're going to tell you that. And then if you want to split it, you just click this button and we create 2 brand new married filing separate returns from the joint return, just so you know that. But back to forms. Okay, but it's everything. I mean, all the worksheets, everything, depreciation schedules and the like are all listed in the list. These are all the federal forms, by the way. Above the list in the forms box, there's a box that says state. That's how I flip to just see the applicable Arizona forms. Click on California to see the California forms. Now, I do get a question every once in a while. It's like, Kevin, what if I want to look at some forms that aren't actually part of the tax return? Because I just want to see the calculations on Schedule A, even though they're not itemizing. There's a button on the forms that says Show All. Now we show all the forms, but the ones that are highlighted are the ones that are actually in the return. So you do have the ability to look at other forms, even though they might not be applicable to the client. All right, so a couple things when you're looking at your tax forms that I think you are absolutely going to love. And let me do something here real quick. Under View, I'm going to delete these little audit buttons here. So as I'm looking at my tax forms, there are 2 things that are going to make your life really easy. One of those is if we have worksheets that we're generating. We do on the left-hand side have a section called worksheets where I can click and then it shows page 1 through 10, right? But what we do instead is we put the links to all of the worksheets directly on the forms. So it's a lot easier for you to understand that if you click this WKS next to Social Security, we're going to bring up the worksheet on top of the screen. And so you can see how we did the calculation. So those are going to be sprinkled throughout all the forms to make it easier. The best feature that we have in Review is even though you never enter data here, you can see the source of the number. And what I mean by that is if I see $9,000 in qualified dividends and I want to know where I entered that on the data entry screens, all I do is I right click on the field and I do this thing called jump to input. And it pulls up a box and literally shows me all the data that I entered for qualified dividends across the dividend screen, any K1s I have, and then here are the amounts coming from Alliant as well as the sample partnership. That way, if you need to edit something, you click the hyperlink sample partnership and we'll take you to that field on the K1, or we'll take you to the Alliant DIV and put you on the field for qualified dividends. Really a good feature. And the other question I get a lot is, Kevin, what if I'm new to Lacerte? Can I just come to the form and right click on Social Security because I couldn't find where to put it in? Yeah, it works that way too. If I right click on that field and jump, it takes me right back to the Social Security. It doesn't have to be a number residing on that field to use that linkage. You can use it for anything. It's really cool. The last but not least is a capability where if you just put your mouse on a field, you see how that little black check mark shows up? Just do a normal mouse click, and it's your ability to leave check marks on the screen so that you know you've already reviewed something. The benefit of using the tick marks, what we call tick marks, is if you change something and in data entry and the qualified dividends changes to $11,000, the check mark will automatically change to red just to give you a heads up that it's different. And that way you can just click it again and it drops it back to green. That's how it works. All right, so that's the form screen. The full return over here with no print previews. You've got your worksheet links directly on the forms. You've got your excellent jump feature that'll show you where you entered all your data, as well as the tick marks. Next button up top is Diagnostics. Now you're going to see these broken down into 2 types. You have a diagnostic at the top that says these are critical warnings. Those are the ones that are going to stop it from being e-filed. In this case, I forgot to put in the Social Security on dependent number 2. Click it. We're going to take you right to dependent number 2. I pop in a social. I go back to Diagnostics. That one is going to disappear. And now all I'm left with is things that are more informational. So in this area, you're going to see things like, I don't know, the American Opportunity Credit was disallowed because their adjusted gross income exceeded $180,000. You have a child and you're claiming the dependent only in even years. And since it's 2023, the program has suppressed the dependent deduction. The estimated tax screen, you haven't entered amount paid entries. Well, why are we telling you that? Well, if I click it, on the estimated tax screen for 2023, we bring over from the prior year what we call a memo. That's what they were supposed to have paid. And then we have fields for amount paid and date, amount paid and date. But what the diagnostic is telling me is that I have the voucher amount came over from the prior year, but I didn't enter any amount paid entries. Well, maybe they didn't make the estimated payments, or maybe they did and you just forgot. There is a nice field on this screen too. If your client made the federal payments exactly like they were supposed to, you don't even need to enter any data here. At the top of the screen, there's a box that says all you need to do is put a 1 in this box, and we will treat the memo entries as amount paid entries. So you don't really have to do anything else. Just put a 1 in there and you're done. Okay, so that's it. All right, so that is the diagnostic section. Get rid of the critical stuff, read the informational things. These are gonna be really good depending on the program you have. Some programs don't do this much and others do a good job of it. And then the last button in the list is the analysis feature. This is super helpful because we break the tax return down by section: retirement contributions, future tax savings, tax tips, and comparisons. So it tells me with no data entry what the max IRA contribution is for taxpayer and spouse and what the savings would be. The max SEP contribution is $23,000. If they max it out, they're going to save $6,236. Okay. Down here, future tax savings is giving them a projection of what it's going to be next year, assuming things don't change all that much. The tax tips are good, and the one that's really popular is where we tell you what their taxable income is if you exclude capital gains and qualified dividends. $372,000. They're in the 32% marginal bracket. It would have to increase by $89,590 in order for them to start being taxed at 35%. And then we do these national average comparisons. I don't have a Schedule A in this return, but for Schedule A and Schedule C, we're going to tell you how your client compares against national averages. Hey, their home mortgage interest on their Schedule A is 50% higher or lower than the national average, people who have a similar AGI. Their vehicle expenses are 20% higher, 20% lower, just to give you kind of an idea of where they fall. All right, so that is Lacerte. It's not hard. You just follow the buttons and do the data entry in the table of contents. When we're done with that, we flip over to forms and saw the really nice tools you have there. Then go to diags and clear the critical stuff and go to analysis and you're done. All right. Now, one more function I want to show you just because it's very popular. And this feature came about because we asked the question of our users years ago. It's like, how do you, if somebody doesn't bring you something, what's your process for keeping track of that? And everybody would say, well, I get out a pen and paper and I make notes. Okay, Kevin didn't bring me his W-2. He doesn't know his Social Security. And then, like, what do you do then? Well, then I either draft an email or I call the client to remind them what those things are, which is really kind of time consuming. So we built an electronic feature for you to track missing information. Let me show you how it works. So I'm going to open up screen number 14, which is where I enter Social Security, Medicare, alimony, and other miscellaneous income. And I'm going to delete the Social Security benefits. So if Kevin didn't bring me his 1099, SSA 1099, I don't write anything down. I just right click on that field and say missing data, and it puts a red wrapper on it. So you just go through the whole return and mark it up. When you're done, there's a button in the button bar at the top that says missing data. When you click it, here's a list of everything that you've marked. So it's kind of electronically tracking it for you. When you've got the list and you want to maybe send them an email, we've already done the work of creating the email down below. Their name and their emails in there. We have a greeting, hit send. So imagine that, right? And the other thing about the missing data tool that's really nice is if you go to the client screen, remember you can change all these columns. I added a column that says missing data. So I know right on this screen, if there's a check mark, that client's still got one thing in their list. And if there is something, I don't have to open the tax return. I just click on the client. The button for that is still up top. Click on it, and here's all the missing stuff. If they tell me their Social Security benefits are $15,000, click the hyperlink, Social Security benefits. We will literally open the tax return and put you on the field for Social Security. Put in 15K. It says, do you want to clear it? Yeah. So now it's gone. If I open up that list, we've removed Social Security from the missing items. So this one feature saves our clients like 12 or 13 minutes of return when they use it. It's really popular. All right. I'm going to ask you the next polling question. And this one is, how frequently today do you use electronic signature technology with your clients? Are you having your clients e-sign anything? And here's a question. Is this software different from TurboTax? Absolutely. Yeah. So TurboTax is a do-it-yourself software which will offer your clients or taxpayers a Q&A. This program does not do a Q&A, right? It's not going to ask you a bunch of questions because our assumption is, as the professional, you have the documents, you follow the table of contents, and you know where it goes. So it's totally different platforms. They have no similarity. I mean, they both can create a tax return, so they are similar in that way, I guess. Yeah. All right, for this group, 34% of you say we don't do electronic signatures. 16% of you do it for more than a quarter of your clients. 25% do it for more than half of your clients, and a full 25% say you do it for all of your clients. So I always like to give the polling question a full minute, so I'll give it a few more seconds here. And then I'm going to do my countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Close poll question 3. So let's talk electronic signatures, and then we're going to talk a little bit about tax planning. So how do we implement signatures in Lacerte? So the way it works is, if you want to send a signature to a client, you highlight them on the main client screen. You go to the top of the page, and there's a button up there that says one-click e-signature request. So what the program does automatically is it already knows what forms need to be signed based on what's in the tax return. So right now we're creating the forms, and I've also elected that every time I do this, I would like to attach the client copy of the return so that when the client gets it, not only will they have their signature documents, but below that, they will see an entire copy of the tax return. Okay, that's why it's taking a little bit longer, because it's generating a pretty large return in PDF. Then it opens this box. And at the top of the screen, it says, here are the documents. I'm including the client copy. Here are my recipients. I go down to the bottom and I hit the send button. That is literally the whole process, right? So the question on this is, okay, so how do you do that? I mean, are you putting the signature lines on the forms and putting the date fields on the forms? Yes. And that's why the integration of this is so good. I do run into customers that use, let's say Adobe, which is a great product, but the problem is there's no integration. My process is I have to create the signature forms and save them as a PDF. Then I have to go into upload it into Adobe. Then I have to take time to drag the signature lines on all the federal and state forms, all the date fields. We do all of that. Now we do use Diagnostics. We use DocuSign as our partner, but it doesn't require that you have a DocuSign license to use it. All we're doing is we're wrapping up the documents and sending them through DocuSign as an encrypted email. The way that the client unencrypts it is through the use of what we call knowledge-based authentication, or what they call KBA. We're going to ask your client 3 questions. They have to get 2 of them correct to be able to open the document and sign it. The questions are fairly straightforward. Things like, according to your driver's license, what color are your eyes? And it would list 5 colors on the screen, and I would pick hazel. Which one of the following 5 vehicles have you ever owned? Any of them or none of them? They only have to get 2 of them right. So it's not a difficult process. So that's kind of the whole process around e-sig. It's really pretty easy. The other thing that's super helpful is when you send these signature requests to your clients, you want to be able to know whether or not they're actually signing documents. So what we do is at the top of Lacerte in the workflow tabs, right after the analysis tab is one called the e-signature dashboard. So DocuSign is feeding this information back into Lacerte, and you will see a list of all the clients that you've sent a request to, and the status column will update. So this client, I voided it because they didn't want to do it. But if it was completed, it would say complete. If it was maybe the spouse signed, but the taxpayer didn't, it would say partially signed. So you have a nice screen to track the progress that your clients are making. So this is very helpful. All right, let's go back here. And I have a question, and that is, can you explain again how to turn on instant diagnostics? Yes. So everything in Lacerte is driven by a set of what we call system options. This program is highly configurable because over the years we've recognized that there aren't too many firms that like to do things exactly the same. So when you get Lacerte, you're going to go up to the top of the screen and you're going to go to settings. And under that is what we call options. Here are all the configuration options that you have in the program to set it up to run the way you want it to. And I'm getting to your question, Doug, I promise. So there's a prepares tab where all of your prepares and their PTINs are entered. There is a tab called items to print, where you tell us that every time you print a client copy, you check boxes. Maybe you don't want to print worksheets in your client copy, or maybe you do, or maybe you want to what depreciation schedules do you want to print? It's very, very in depth where you can determine what prints in a return and what doesn't. I showed you earlier the status feature. Remember how I said you can track status? This is where you change them. We give you a few, but if you don't like them and you'd prefer to call the word final complete, just change it, right? So that's how you configure statuses. But to Doug's question, the tab on the far left called setup is where there's a button in here that says show, it's like at the bottom of the first section, show input warnings on the detail tab. Just set that to yes. Okay, so that way, as you're doing data entry, it will kind of do diagnostics at that point rather than have you wait to go to the diagnostic screen. So that's where you activate it, Doug. The same thing holds true when I showed you the thing where you can take the form and put it on the other monitor by clicking the F button at the top. Okay, well, you can set it to do that all the time if you like to have the form on the other screen. And that's in the same program options. It says auto pop out forms and diagnostics. If you set that to yes, it's going to automatically do that for you. Every time you open a return, it's going to take the form and stick it on the other monitor so you have input, output simultaneously. These are system options. All right. Now, the last one, just since I'm in here, is remember I told you about customizing the columns on your client screen? You also do that in the options area. It's a tab called display. Okay, on the right-hand side, this box that says display, these are all of the columns that I have already selected. Section 179 carryover, refund, business income, capital gains. On the left is what you all can pick from. So if you think, hey, I want to know everybody with an adjustment to income who's got a penalty on early withdrawal, hit the right arrow in the middle and make a column for it. So you can see all your adjustments, all your income, like farm income, business income, alimony, at-risk losses. I mean, it's a really cool feature that allows for a high level of customization. Okay, so that is that. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is tax planning. So we basically have like 4 different ways that clients do tax planning in Lacerte. The first one is kind of old school, right? I don't use a tax planning software, but I'd like to make a copy of Samantha's return so that I don't have to screw up her original return to do a little planning in the copy. So all you do to copy a return is go to the menu at the upper left under client and say copy. And then we say, what is the number for the copy? We'll just say copy, whatever, 11. So now I've got Samantha's return. One is the plan, or one is her original, and then this is the copy. That's the one that I would monkey with to do, tax planning on, it's not doing projections for next year. It's just doing kind of like a messing with the current year return. Now, if you want, you also can use in the tax program or in the screens, there's a screen number 7, 2024 estimated taxes. And on this screen down here, we have this thing called a federal estimated tax worksheet. So if you wanted to change the calculation of estimates, that's what this screen does. The client told me, the taxpayer said, I'm getting a $30,000 raise in wages next year. So you put 30,000. You can put positive or negative numbers on the screen. The A code on next to the field means adjust. I'm adjusting the numbers up or down. It doesn't change the tax return itself. It's just changing the way we calculate estimates. Now, another way to do tax planning is a more traditional multi-year projection software that's included, and it's accessed at the top of the screen in Lacerte. There's a tax planner button. I want to export this client to the tax planner. Click OK. It takes the full return and moves it into the tax planning app. And I'll show you really quickly how this works. It's really straightforward. Now, when it opens and creates a new tax plan, it asks you, what kind of a plan would you like to create? And the most common plan is the case and year analysis. But down here, it says years and cases. I want to start with my base year, 2023, and I want to run a 3-year projection. click OK. So what it does is it brings in the data from the current tax return into column number 1. Now I probably want to copy that data to the other 2 years. So there's a copy column button where you can copy the cases so you have a 3-year look. Now, how do you make adjustments? This is kind of like the tax summary in the planner. All you do is go to the top and you've got a section called income, adjustments, deductions. Go to income. Everything on the left that's highlighted means that data came in from the tax return. So they already have rental properties and businesses. So if I click rent and royalty income, they already have 2. I want to add another one, and I want to see the effect of $30,000 in 2024 of rental income. I put 30,000, I go back up to the top to the summary page. Now it's increased my income by that amount, and down at the bottom, it's showing me the difference in the bottom line. So that's, like a multi-year projection software is what that is. Now, the one that is brand new is called Tax Advisory. This is a totally different animal. And let me show you how that works. Now, this works with both Lacerte and ProConnect, not yet Pro Series. We probably will be adapting it to Pro Series, but I'm not sure what the timing of that is yet. So let me show you how that works. It's an online app, and this is what it looks like. So let me go ahead and sign back into it. No pun intended. And I'll open up Advisory. All right, so when you open the Tax Advisory app, we take you to this screen, which is kind of the equivalent to the Lacerte client screen, but it's a list of all the current tax plans you've already created instead of tax returns you've already created. If you want to create a new tax plan, go to the top of the screen and click the blue button, create a tax plan, and select the client. And by selecting the client, we're going to grab their tax return and we're going to upload it and import it into the planning tool. But for this purpose, I'm going to make it a little easier. I've already started working on a plan for John Taxpayer. So I'm going to open his Q3 plan by clicking over here on the right-hand side, review the tax plan. So what it does is it pulls in the return, and it brings me to this screen. And actually, you know what? I opened the wrong one. So I'm going to go back out to the list. I think I want to look at John's Q2 plan because that's the one that I am more familiar with. So let's open that, John Taxpayer Q2. Okay, so when you open the Advisory app, you navigate it at the top of the screen. We have the first section called Pre-Strategy Baseline. We have the Strategy section, the Review Plan section, and the Client Report. So why do we have a Pre-Strategy Baseline? Well, it brings in all their W-2s and their rental income, and this is where you might make an adjustment because they're getting a bump in their wages, so they're increasing their rental income. And so this is like, before you start doing planning, you can make some adjustments to the current return. Once that's done, which isn't absolutely necessary, go to the next tab up top called Strategies. Now, why is this better than typical planners? Because if I use the Lacerte Planner, while it's a really good app, I have to look at the tax return and figure out myself where the opportunities exist. This program does that. If you look on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a blue box or kind of a circle there that says Insights 17. That means we found 17 things in this tax return that are suitable for planning right now because they're relevant to your client. And how do I know what those items are? Well, we break it down below there. We have an income shifting section, which has 5 items in it, 4 items in expense shifting, 2 in business deduction. So all you do is you open this section and it will tell you healthcare flexible spending account and contributed $0 to her HSA, but she could max that out at $3,200. You're like, okay, I'd like to add that to the plan. Hit the add button. And what that does is it moves it over into the middle section. I've already added 3 items to the plan, which were originally in the Insights section. I'm bunching itemized deductions. I'm taking advantage of 401k and taking advantage of residential energy. So hopefully you're with me so far. It's not hard. Pick from the Insights, pull over what you want. Okay. Now, where do you adjust the numbers? In the middle boxes, there's a 2024 strategy change column. It originally told me she made 0 contributions to her Mercy Hospital 401k. So I plugged $10,000. Immediately, it tells me the savings is $3,330, $6,760 for bunching, and $4,500 for residential energy. Total tax savings, $14,590. Net out of pocket is $26,740. That's how you create a tax plan. Now, to show the reports, you go to the next button up top called Client Report. And there are two reports that are auto-generated. One at the top is called a proposal. The other one is the more in-depth tax plan. Now, you see how it says Intuit on it? It won't, I promise. But there is a button in the upper right that says Report Settings, where I can upload my company logo. Since I work for Intuit, I uploaded an Intuit logo. If you don't like the color blue, you can change the color themes to whatever you think is nice for your client, okay? Then save settings. The second page of the report gives them a page that says, if you take no action next year, these are your anticipated balance dues, federal and state. But if you implement the strategies, these are your new numbers, and this is the overall tax savings. The next page is really nice because it shows them how much you found. Hopefully, you're charging for services. And so I put in my fee, $1,500, and then we do an ROI projection to let the client know how great you are, right? Okay, so that's that. Then go to the tax plan, and it's got some of the similar documents in it, but you see how it says, here's like a cover page. We create a table of contents. We have a disclaimer. And then down here, same one, no action with strategies. Down here, we break all the strategies down in descending order by amount. We have another page that shows them how to get their maximum savings, that shows the strategy change that you put in, what their net out of pocket and tax savings are. Now, one thing that's really helpful in this too is for every strategy in the plan, we actually create a one-page document so that your client can take that away with a little more information on what a 401k is and what does it mean to bunch itemized deductions and what are the rules around residential energy credit, just to give them a heads up. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, we actually charge for this today in Lacerte and in ProConnect, $75 to unlock a client to be able to run as many advisory plans as you want. Beginning January 1st of 2025, this coming January, we will no longer be charging for it. Anyone can use it, and you can create really good looking tax plans for your clients. But this is something we're extremely proud of. It's a great option for doing it. There aren't really too many advisory tools out there, certainly not in the tax industry. There are third-party vendors who do it, but the problem is you have to recreate the tax return before you even begin to plan. So it's a lot more helpful there. All right, so that is how we do advisory. So again, 4 different tax plan options. Pick the one you like. All right, the last thing I want to talk about in today's meeting is documents. So, we have 40 some odd thousand Lacerte clients, and everybody does document management a little bit differently. We have our own document management program attached to Lacerte called DMS, Document Management System. We didn't get super creative with the name. Anyway, but that program is great. You can save copies of tax returns to it. You can scan all the client's documents and store them. You can email out your clients out of it. But the limitation is it's not a portal, right? The client cannot connect to it. It's just for storage. Now, for those who want a very similar look and feel of document management, but also want a portal, we have for now about 13 years have an integration with a third-party company called SmartVault, who is an outstanding document system. We've recently released another integration with a product called SafeSend. Yeah, Jillian, SmartVault is great. So let's say you're using Lacerte and you want to use SmartVault and have returns saving automatically to SmartVault without having to create PDFs and put them on your computer and upload them and all that. The only thing you have to do is go to your settings in Lacerte to the options area that we looked at earlier. And in the far left tab that says setup, remember I was showing you those different options for the diags and stuff, drop down here a little bit. And this is where you tell the program that every time I print a return, I hit Control P, what's going to happen? And the first is, if anything, do I want to send anything to the printer? Well, a lot of people are trying to get away from printed copies of returns, so I would set that to none. But maybe I'd like to create a PDF copy of the preparer file copy, which has different things than the client copy. I can set that to yes. But if I'm using our own documents management, which we call DMS, then you can save the client copy, the preparer copy to that. Or if you're using SmartVault, that's right here. SV means SmartVault. I want it to automatically send the client to SmartVault. The benefit of this is it creates the PDF. We send it to Smart Vault. We already know who the client is. We know what year it is, and we know what folder to drop it in called tax returns, and it's automatically stored there. Then the client is notified to log in and get their documents. So that's kind of how it works. Now, we do have an internal document system beyond the three that I just mentioned, and it's called Link, because we're linking you and your client together. So let me show you how this one works. It's a little bit different. So on my client, John and Mary taxpayer right here, there is a column on my Lacerte screen that says Intuit Link. I click this little invite button and this box pops up, and it's got an email in there, and you can change all that if you want, but I can send an engagement letter. You all know what an organizer is, right? The same questionnaire in the organizer is the one we use in this one. We give you about 20 questions. If you don't like them, delete some and you can add your own. And then the checklist, which is creating a document checklist for your client. But the benefit is it bases it on what they had in the prior year return. So if I hit the edit button, if you send it to the client, it's going to say, upload your entertainment partners W-2, your INT from Smith Barney, K1 from Sample Partnership. It kind of knows depending on what the client had in the prior year. So you send a request to the client. They log into a website that's very secure that we've created that looks like this. It's called Intuit Link. So here, engagements, questions, documents. The client clicks the engagement letter, they read it, and at the bottom, John's already signed it. But if he hadn't, this would be a blank box. It would say, type your name here to sign. They type their name, they go back to the main page, they go to the questionnaire, they answer all the questions electronically from the organizer, and then they upload all their documents from the document checklist section. Now they have multiple options here, just so you're aware of it. They can, if they have their own cloud account, they can click this button and they can pull documents that maybe were stored in Dropbox or Google Drive, or maybe they're on a mobile phone and they want to upload their Intel W-2. The moment they click the blue button on their device, we engage the camera, they snap a photo and it's uploaded so they can take pictures. If your client likes to scan and they know how to do that, great. They can click share, they can click upload it, and now we're just kind of browsing their computer for that. These are all my personal pictures. You don't want to see those. All right, so that's that. And then the final one is if you have a client that's got a brokerage and they can't figure out how to get their tax documents and they call you and say, where is it on the E-Trade website? They don't have to do that anymore because we have a direct integration through the Get It For Me button where your client can pull documents from their broker. All they do is click E-Trade, put in their credentials, and then that would enable the blue button, Get My Form. It'll go out, grab the int and pull it in. So then the other part of this is there's a website that you all can log into where everything comes back, but I've talked so much that I don't have time to show it to you. But just so you know, this is free. You don't have to pay anything to use the Intuit Link feature. But again, you have Smart Vault, you've got SafeSend, you've got our own DMS if you just want to use it for storage. Okay, so I'm going to ask you the last polling question. Sorry I waited so long. Would you be willing to compare your current software against, I guess, not just Lacerte, but any Intuit solution? And I'll give you a quick reminder that tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time, I am doing a very thorough demonstration on our cloud program, so you can see how that differs. Some really cool stuff going on in that on the cloud. All right, so I'm going to give it about a minute for the polling questions, and then I always get questions on how much does this cost? Can you convert my data from, TurboTax or Drake or UltraTax or CCH? Yeah, we have conversion software that will convert from all the different vendors out there. So I'm going to give you one quick slide on kind of what you can do to talk to someone, get pricing, things like that. All right, I'm going to count down now from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and close that final polling question of the day. Here is the final couple of slides. So just so you are aware of it, if you ever make the switch to Lacerte or to Pro Series or to Pro Connect, we have an onboarding team and we call them Easy Start. So they're the ones that are going to give you access to all of the free training modules that we have to get yourself trained up. They're the ones that will walk you through the data conversion process, which is a pretty easy process. Once your files are uploaded, it takes about 24 hours for machines to convert them and have you pull them back down. And they'll also help you with, product installs. Hey, how do I set up printing? They're just kind of your personal point of contact to get you to where you need to be before tax season starts. Now, if you want to get pricing, you want to try a free version of Lacerte, what we call an eval. If you want to just ask more questions, I've given you the number of our consultants, and that is 833-393-9446. They're very nice people. Some of them have been with the company over 30 years. They know what they're talking about. They're just there to help. I promise you, they're not pushy. So you want pricing, you want to get a copy of the return, let them know, or a copy of the product. Now, just so you're aware of this too, in chat, I should have already done this. I'm going to put in my email address. It's Kevin_Reinard@intuit.com. And if you'd like a copy of the recording of the course, write my email address down, fire me an email. I'll be happy to. It's usually available about an hour after the webinar concludes. I'll be happy to send it to you. Or if you just have other general questions, I'll be happy to respond. So, all right, well, that concludes today's webinar. Look at that, 10:01 Pacific time. I went a minute over. I'm going to send you all $5 for taking your time up. No, I'm not. But anyway, thanks. I hope you enjoyed today's course. You learned a little bit more about Lacerte. It's a really good product. It's been around for 47 years, does some wonderful things. And if you're struggling with your current program, might be a good opportunity to take a look. So have a great rest of the week. Good luck with the filing deadline. I know it's coming up here, next Monday, I think. So good luck with that. But if there's anything you need, please let us know. Bye, everybody.